Praise the Lord today, everybody. Welcome to Call to the Cross. As always, Call to the Cross is the podcast about all things Jesus. And we have a couple of guests today, as you see, joined the old-timer, Brother Darrell Johnson, pastor of Fusion Church, my pastor.
Yes, sir.
How you doing this morning, Pastor?
Fantastic, brother. How are you?
Doing wonderful. And we're blessed to have with us in revival this week and today on Call to the Cross, Evangelist Josh Bowman from Grundy, Virginia. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Great anointed services so far in this revival. And any of you that are familiar with this brother's ministry know that it's anointed word, it's anointed singing, anointed music. His wife's anointed. His kids were anointed last night.
Yes.
Bless him, man. But Brother Josh, as always, we like to kind of start off when we have a guest. Tell us about your conversion experience, brother. What were the events or things that happened that brought you to Jesus as your Savior?
I am a church kid, and so it's all I've ever known. I'm one of those kids that my mom made me go when I didn't want to, and so
you had a drug problem.
I had a drug problem. I was drugged to church. I didn't miss Wednesday night. I was there. If they washed windows on Tuesday, I was there. And so I'm one of those kids, and so really all I've ever known. But of course, at some point it has to happen to you.
Yes.
I was intrigued with just I've always kind of made this statement. Some kids, their superheroes wears capes. Mine's always wore suit and ties. I've always just had a fascination and love for the ministry. I love preachers, and I guess just because my heart was drawn to it. And so somewhere as a child, I found myself praying and really having a desire to seek the Lord. And so that always puts you in an altar somewhere. And so really somewhere in my childhood that happened, and really through my teenage years what happened was I began traveling with my pastor. At that time he evangelized a little bit more significantly than he does now. He traveled a lot, so when I was out of school during the summers, I would go to revivals with him.
Amen.
I spent a lot of time on the weekends just wherever he was preaching. That's where I was, and so it kind of developed my love for the ministry, developed my love for evangelism, and I spent a lot of times in the passenger seat of a old blue church van going to church somewhere.
I love it.
And so that's kind of a short story of how I'm here. I started playing piano when I had a little toy keyboard, and that I think my great uncle got me for Christmas one year, and I was sitting in my room and I was just suddenly playing Mary Had a Little Lamb and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and my mom kind of picked up. She said, he can play that. And so she signed me up for piano lessons, and the rest is history. I guess I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah. You obviously had the ear for it.
Yeah. So I took lessons as a kid, and my piano teacher was actually the teacher at school, and she tried to teach me how to read music, and she would put the books and the papers up, and I hated it. I mean, my brain didn't perceive it, and so she would play it, and I would hear it, and I'd memorize it, and then I'd play it, and then she found out real quickly that I wasn't looking at the book when I played the song, and so she told my mom, she said, I don't think I can help him. She said, he's going to need a different kind of teacher. And so needless to say, we found others that were able to kind of help and develop that, and so here I am, still can't read 1 ounce of music.
Yeah, that's awesome when you say that. To me, I think the best musicians are those that do it like you do it. It's just that gift in them. They got the ear for it. When I was going to college, I took a jazz humanities class as an elective, and they talked about one of the greatest musical savants ever, a guy named Bix Beiderbecke. You might have heard of him. He played trumpet, but he could play anything. Like when he was 2, I think, his mother saw he walked up to the piano show in the house. He'd reach over his little head and just play music, which is amazing to me. It's just a different thing, but back then when it was the jazz age, they wanted you to have a union card. They tried to really organize it. How we do this church sometime. They just wanted to organize it and have everything, look real professional. And to play in them big orchestras, you had to have a card. Well, he was the best trumpet player on the planet at the time, and he'd go up there and he'd try to get in with some of these groups, but they'd have to have him, hey, you don't have a card. And so he tried to get a card, and he would play, and they would notice it was great, but they started picking up on, wait a minute. play that again. But he never played it the same way twice. He played it great, but they knew he wasn't reading the music.
Right.
But to me, the best ones are the ones that do it like you're talking about, that have the ear.
Right, yeah, well, and it's, it can be there, but it has to be developed. And so that's how I learned to play, was you be in church, and you hear somebody do something, and I've been privileged to just be around a lot of just wonderful musicians, and especially piano players. And so I listened, and I hear something I like, and then I would go home as a teenager, and then I would learn. I would sit down and I'd figure it out until I did what I heard them do, and so then I incorporated it into my style. So my style is unique, and if you ask me if you ask me to teach you to do it, I can't do it. I can't translate that. I just do it, and I don't really know what I'm doing. I just do it. So.
Well, you've probably heard this before. It seemed like your style is really similar to like Brother Tommy Bates or Brother Jeremiah Yoakum. Is that by accident?
Well, no.
Or them guys you were listening to?
Well, no. And honestly, I didn't really learn of them and meet them and become acquainted with them until later on up in years. But it's just that mountain culture sound, that Appalachian sound. It's just, we are unique, and we have our way of doing things and just our sound, and it's hard to mimic it. You just have to kind of know it, and so it's its own thing. It's its own entity, and so yeah, it's very similar. We have a very similar style of singing and playing, and I always joke and kind of laugh. I say people found me because they went to YouTube looking for Brother Tommy and Jeremiah, and they accidentally found me. So that's usually how it happens.
Yeah, really similar styles, man. I did think about it. I said it could be just an Appalachian thing, because you do get that. Matter of fact, in all like music, really in this country, I don't care what genre, because the original people here were those mountain people, when they got here hitting them coast, man, they just started getting up in that Appalachian country, in those mountains, in those coastal states. And but you see it, I don't care if it's bluegrass or blues, gospel, it's got that mountain sound in it somewhere.
Yeah, it does. Well, it has such a strong influence. And so, it's a variety of sounds. You can go back into the little mountain churches back where I'm from, and it's nothing to walk in, and you can hear banjos and mandolins and fiddles. And the churches that I grew up in as a kid, church didn't start at 7 o'clock. It started about 6:15, and so they would get there early, and they would already be singing and playing and tuning up and gearing up, and by the time church started at 7 o'clock, they were already ready to go. And it was just that sound I love. Even to this day, there's still a lot of those mountain churches I go to, and I can pull in the parking lot, and you can hear that sound of them already. Just that, I don't know, it's just that sound, and it's a very comforting feeling to me, and so I enjoy hearing that.
I know the mountain folk really love the string instruments.
Oh yeah.
I was probably 20, 30 years ago, it was like probably in the early 90s, preaching in Parkersburg. And I don't know if you ever heard of Brother Forrest Cooper or not. He's passed away now, but had a church up there in Parkersburg and had a beautiful B3 organ in there, man, which I love that sound too. But he had an old brother, mountain guy, the guitar player in there. He said, I think it's a sin to have one of them things. he didn't have no use for no organ. Yeah. Of course, he was being a little funny, but he basically let you know, man, if it ain't got strings, it ain't for him.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, and the organ within itself, and there's kind of joke in Pentecostal ranks, if it's not a Hammond, I'm not playing it.
That's right, brother.
And so, it's just, it's got its own sound, and it's anything else just doesn't really fit the flow. And so we have the B3 at our church. And so we had an old Hammond A100, which sounds, it's almost like a B3. The sound's very similar. And so it was in our fellowship hall. So when they remodeled the fellowship hall, my pastor said, I think I want to sell that and get rid of it. I said, well, I think I got a place I can put it. And so I took it to our house, and I set it up and got it cleaned up. And so when I go home, I'm able to go downstairs, and you can hear the sound of that Hammond just ringing through my house. And so I love it. It is the sound of church.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's the sound of church.
Yeah. I don't know if his brother Darrell's dad in these parts was like renowned for being like the guy, Oh, he's a real good Hammond player. Wow. And I know he's at the matter of fact, I got to hear his dad's A100. He took us. You preached, where's that at? Near Bainbridge.
Attapogus, Georgia.
Attapogus, outside Attapogus. It was actually something else. It was a community outside. Attapogus is tiny.
Yeah.
It was a community outside of
It was a suburb
Attapogus in the woods. Some woods. No, but yeah, and that brother could play it too.
Yes,
I love that Hammond organ, but ain't nothing like it, like you said. You said you was raised in church. Now, were you always raised full gospel? But basically, tell us how you got the Holy Ghost, man. That experience.
Well, I'm a very unique situation. I was sharing with Pastor yesterday. I actually grew up in a Free Will Baptist church, and during that time, the pastor at the church, he was filled with the Holy Ghost. And so somewhere about the mid-90s, I'm about a 10, 11-year-old kid, and just a Holy Ghost revival broke out in that little Free Will Baptist church, and through that, we met our pastor, and he is. It was just a sovereign move of God for which really cultivated who I am, and it was just one of those things. I look back on my life, and it changed me, and it affected me so much because I saw how community came together. I saw how churches worked together, and it was beautiful just to watch people that really had a hunger and a desire for God. They just, they laid down all differences and they came together, and I just watched so many people just genuinely be born again and come to Christ, and it was sincere. It was just a time of soul winning, and it's kind of what I got in on. And so through that time, God just he did a work in my heart. I had suddenly my desire changed. I was very into athletics when I was a kid. When you're from Grundy, Virginia, the big thing there is wrestling. Everybody, which really it's we're state champions. If I'm not mistaken, I'm thinking maybe we just won our 25th title. And so it's a big thing. So you kind of come out of the womb, with a singlet, And so you just kind of do it. And so I came from a family. All my cousins, I had like 4 cousins who were state champions. So that was kind of just that was kind of the path that was set up for me. And I did that, And so I did that. But somewhere about I was 13 or 14 years old. My heart changed. Just my desire. Suddenly, the Lord was dealing with me and pulling on me, and I had reached a place where I knew I had to make a decision. And so I tell, especially when I do a lot of youth services and I'm in youth conferences and things like that, I always try to relate that to today's youth. It's not there's nothing wrong with being involved with whatever you want to be in. But at the same time, you've got to be aware that if God's dealing with you and He's pulling on you to do something. And I remember one of my coaches came to me and he pulled me out of I think I was in the library, and he pulled me out in the hallway, and I didn't. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just didn't want to do it anymore. I just didn't. He's like, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "What's happened to you?" And I remember standing in the hallway, and I made this statement. I looked at him in the eyes, and I said, "Coach, I've just lost my desire." But what I didn't realize at 13 years old is it wasn't that I lost my desire just changed.
Yes.
And so I am seeing that, as the prophet Haggai prophesied about. The Lord said, I will shake the heavens and the earth. He said, and the desire of nations will come. And I'm watching that desire rise up in people, a real hunger, a real thirst for righteousness, a real desire for a move of God. A desire to be near to the Lord. And so I can relate to that because it happened to me. Something just shifted in my heart. And so I'm seeing that as I travel. You can just you can see God just raising up, especially raising up young people that may not know exactly what to do, but they want to know what to do. They have a desire to do something for God, and I think it's important for us to be aware when we can when we can discern that and see that in somebody, to really just cultivate it. And that's what I'm thankful for, is my pastor really pushed me. Even I'm 36 years old, and he still pushes me. He never lets me off the hook for anything. I can remember being a teenager, and I'd come to church and I'd say, "Oh, my throat's sore. I don't feel like I can't sing. I can't do anything." And he would say, "Okay." And then he'd get up in the service and he'd say, "I know Brother Josh has got a sore throat, but I really feel like he needs to sing at least the chorus of this song," and make me do it. And so, and when I was a kid, I'd be like, "Oh man, why'd he do me like that?"